woman stands in a dim Los Angeles kitchen, staring at a rusted baking pan. No eggs, no butter, no milk. Her child's birthday is in 2 hours. A modern parent would panic, swiping a credit card for a quick delivery. She doesn't. She grabs a single metal fork. No mixing bowls, no fancy appliances, just cold, calculated desperation. She pours a dark liquid directly into the tin, stirring it right there. She is about to pull a cake out of thin air. Using nothing but raw American grit, they will call it a masterpiece. Before we start unpacking the secrets buried in your grandmother's kitchen, hit the subscribe button. You are going to want to remember this. These weren't just cheap meals. They were calculated acts of survival. We are going to count down 25 forgotten dinners that kept America moving when the shelves went bare. You need to stick around for number 4. It was a masterful deception, a visual trick played on hungry children to make them believe they were eating something they had not seen in months. Number 13 isn't even cooking. It is straight chemical magic that literally multiplied what little they had out of thin air. And wait until you see number 18. A dish so impossible, so defiant of basic baking logic, requiring absolutely not one single drop of milk or a single egg, that it feels like a real miracle. Let us open that recipe box. Number 5, victory cake. Shortening, flour, eggs, milk, a little sugar, and a heavy pour of corn syrup. By May of 1942, sugar rationing hit the American home front. You could not just walk into a store and buy a bag. Your family's consumption was tracked, stamped, and strictly limited. For a mother trying to build a childhood for her kids, it felt impossible. But celebrations still had to happen. A recipe printed in the Winston-Salem Sentinel in July of 1945 showed women how to cream shortening and stretch their precious sugar with corn syrup. This cake was baked in the final grueling months of the war, when the end was finally in sight. They named it for the victory they were praying for. It was hope, baked right into a layer cake. Number 24, Victory Garden Salad. Gelatin, carrots, beets, and celery. Everything pulled straight from the dirt of an American backyard. Royal Gelatin pushed these recipes hard during the war. It sounds strange to a modern palate, encasing raw vegetables in a trembling, bright mold of Jell-O. But you have to understand the mission. Mothers had to make cheap root vegetables look festive and appealing to children who grew up surrounded by anxiety. It was the beautiful absurdity of wartime cooking. Taking beets from the dirt and making them look like a party. Number 23, ration cookies. Oats, flour, brown sugar, one single egg, and melted fat. This recipe appeared in the Springfield Morning Union just days after Christmas in December of 1943. This was not about baking a delicate, pretty treat. This was an exercise in sheer, calculated volume. By substituting less rationed brown sugar and packing the dough with heavy oats and dried fruits, a mother could stretch this batter incredibly far. One single batch yielded 60 cookies. Think about that wartime math. 60 cookies from almost nothing. It was enough to keep your own children happy, share with the families down your street, and still have enough left over to pack into a tin and ship across the ocean to a soldier. Number 22, carrot cookies. Flour, shortening, spices, and grated carrots. When sugar is locked behind a government ration stamp, you find sweetness wherever it grows. Carrots were unrationed. They were overflowing from the 20 million victory gardens planted across the United States. The government even created a propaganda character named Dr. Carrot to push them on the public. American wives quickly realized that grating raw carrots into cookie dough provided moisture and a natural sugar spike that their ration books simply could not afford. Vegetables hiding inside cookies. Only a world war could make that work. Number 21, mock apple pie. Soda crackers, sugar syrup, cream of tartar, lemon juice, and a crust. Notice what is missing from that list. There is not a single piece of fruit in this pie. Nabisco actually printed this exact recipe directly on the back of the Ritz cracker box. When fresh fruit was completely out of the budget, American wives used pure chemistry. Simmering the crackers in sugar water with cream of tartar and lemon juice mimicked the tartness of an apple. The crackers broke down into a texture that fooled the eye and the tongue. It was a deception born from poverty, dressed up in a pie crust for Sunday dinner. It cost about a dime to make. Today, a slice of artisan apple pie costs $6 at a modern bakery. Your grandmother made it from crackers, acid, and sheer willpower. Number 20. Oatmeal Brown Betty. Stale bread, rolled oats, sliced local apples, molasses, and a tiny dot of margarine. Featured in the USDA Victory Recipes pamphlet of 1,943, this was a brilliant workaround. It delivered the smell and warmth of an apple pie, but it required absolutely no precious butter for a flaky crust. It used old bread, so nothing was wasted. It used honey or molasses, so sugar stamps stayed safe in the book. The smell of cinnamon and baked apples filling a cramped kitchen. That was comfort. In a time when comfort was severely rationed. Number 19. Honey Pumpkin Pie. Fresh pumpkin, milk, eggs, spices, and honey. Published in the Pittsburgh Sun-Telegraph in early December 1943. When November rolled around, American mothers faced a terrifying emotional reality. How do you host a Thanksgiving dinner when you have no sugar? They refused to let the holiday slip away. They pulled pumpkins from their own gardens and swapped the missing sugar for honey and molasses. Newspaper recipe columns became absolute lifelines. Serving this pie meant that despite the war, Thanksgiving was still real. Hold on. Stop the countdown for a second. We need to talk about why you do not know these recipes. Why did your own mother never teach you how to bake a cake without butter? Or make a pie out of crackers? Because they were deliberately erased from the American memory. This knowledge was not accidentally lost to time. It was intentionally buried by a post-war corporate machine that desperately needed you to stop cooking. During the worst years of the war, Betty Crocker distributed 7 million copies of a survival booklet called Your Share. In 1943, she actively taught American wives how to stretch rations, how to reuse scraps, and how to maintain total sovereignty over their kitchens. But the moment the war ended, that narrative violently flipped. The food industry had a massive problem. They realized they could never make billions of dollars off an American mother who knew how to make 60 cookies from a handful of cheap oats. That math does not work for Wall Street. They needed absolute dependency. They needed you hooked on their supply chain. So, in 1950, commercial cake mixes flooded grocery store shelves. 3 years later, in 1953, Swanson launched the frozen TV dinner. They targeted the booming American suburbs with aggressive, psychological marketing. They sold a manufactured lie that cooking from scratch was somehow old-fashioned. They convinced families that stretching ingredients was a shameful sign of poverty. True modern living, they claimed, meant tearing open a cardboard box and tossing it in the trash. The betrayal was absolute. It was complete. The very same Betty Crocker who guided women through wartime scarcity suddenly pivoted to pushing highly processed convenience foods. They effectively created a subscription model for human survival. You pay them every week for the right to eat. They traded rugged, self-sufficient resilience for fragile convenience. They made an entire generation of women feel deeply ashamed of the exact survival skills that had just kept the country alive through a global crisis. They crushed a culture of resourcefulness and replaced it with a culture of endless consumption. You do not know these recipes today because the modern food industry needed you to buy their packaged solutions, instead of trusting the power of your own two hands. Now, let's get back to the list and look at the meals they tried to make you forget. Let us talk about the raw mathematics of American survival. The Office of Price Administration did not care if your kids went to bed hungry. Each person in the country was issued exactly 64 red stamps a month to cover all meat, cheese, and fats. A family of 4 had 256 points. That was it. Every single dinner was a high-stakes math problem, calculated by exhausted women sitting at wooden kitchen tables. Number 18. Wacky cake. This is the dish we warned you about. Flour, sugar, cocoa powder, baking soda, vinegar, oil, and water. Look closely at that list. No eggs, no butter, no milk. When dairy was fiercely restricted, mothers engineered a chemical reaction between vinegar and baking soda to make the batter rise. They did not even dirty a mixing bowl. They poured the dry ingredients directly into the baking pan. made 3 wells, poured in the liquids, and stirred it with a single fork. 0 dishes to wash. For a mother working factory shifts, that wasn't just convenient, it was a lifeline. It cost about 12 cents to bake in 1943. Today, sleek bakeries use the exact same wartime formula, slap a green label on it, and charge $7 for a slice of vegan chocolate cake. Your grandmother just called it Tuesday. Number 17, war cake. Some called it boiled raisin cake. This recipe is a ghost that refuses to die. It survived 3 American crises, World War I, the Great Depression, and World War II. A wartime essay detailed a woman named Ethel, who baked this for a 4th of July celebration with an empty pantry. She boiled raisins in water, dumped in bacon drippings, added flour and spices, and prayed fervently as she closed the oven door. The bacon fat and boiled raisin liquid provided the moisture. It was a triumph of sheer grit. Number 16, oatmeal. Meatballs. When you only had a handful of red stamps, you could not afford pure ground beef. Mothers mixed a tiny portion of meat with an equal amount of cheap oatmeal as an extender. They browned it in a skillet and smothered it in heavy gravy. Children grew up eating these, never knowing they were chewing half a bowl of oats. It was a brilliant, silent shield against poverty. Number 15, potato flotties. Grated potatoes, a little flour, salt, and fat for frying. Potatoes were unrationed and cheap. Depending on the week, these hot, crispy pancakes were breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Versatility was not a lifestyle choice. It was how you stayed alive. Number 14, potato piglets. Hollowed-out baked potatoes, stuffed with one single, tiny sausage. It sounds like a game, and that was exactly the point. Wartime mothers used the name piglets to make a microscopic scrap of rationed meat feel like a massive, fun feast. They were protecting their kids' minds just as much as their stomachs. Number 13, butter saver spread. This is pure, molecular ingenuity. Butter was roughly 50 cents a pound, but more importantly, it drained your red stamps. So, American wives bought Knox gelatin, dissolved it in milk, and whipped it into softened butter. They literally doubled the physical volume of the block. The Smithsonian actually tested this recipe and confirmed it works perfectly. Women were executing advanced food science in cramped, hot kitchens. They doubled their fat supply for pennies. Today, gourmet shops whip butter with cheap additives and sell it back to you as artisan compound butter for $12. Number 12, victory bread. White flour was conserved and shipped to the troops. So, wives needed whole wheat, rye, or oat flour, sweetening it with molasses instead of sugar. The smell of baking bread was the ultimate psychological anchor. It proved to the family that life was going to continue. Number 11, cheese stretcher casserole. Macaroni, a thin white sauce, breadcrumbs, and a painfully small block of cheese. Kraft published pamphlets teaching women how to make cheese go further. To make a tiny ration of dairy feed 6 hungry mouths was an art form born from desperation. Pattern break. Stop looking at these desperate meals and feeling pity. That is a massive mistake. What these women were executing in those kitchens was not just poverty cooking. It was brilliant, decentralized, strategic warfare. Look at the raw data. By 1944, American families had torn up their manicured front lawns and planted 20 million victory gardens. Those backyards produced 40% of all fresh vegetables consumed in the United States, almost half of the nation's produce supply, grown entirely by civilians. Your grandmother did not wait for a fragile supply chain to feed her family. She became the supply chain, and it gets heavier. The United States government begged housewives to save every single drop of waste kitchen fat. Women carefully poured rendered bacon grease into glass jars and carried them to the local butcher. In return, they received 2 extra red ration points and 4 cents a pound. Why? Because animal fats were processed straight down into glycerin, the core chemical required to manufacture explosives, bombs, and bullets. Your grandmother was not just cooking dinner, she was literally manufacturing ammunition in a cast iron skillet. That is not victimhood. That is terrifying competence. Number 10. Mock sausage. Made entirely from mashed lima beans, heavily seasoned with sage and thyme, rolled in flour, and fried in oil. With real breakfast meats fiercely rationed, mothers shaped beans into perfect cylinders so breakfast still felt like breakfast. The lengths an American mother went to in order to shield her children and create a sense of normalcy is staggering. It cost about 5 cents to make. Today, a package of plant-based sausage costs $6, marketed to you as a massive modern innovation. Wartime wives engineered it 80 years ago. Number 9. Potato soup. Potatoes, carrots, onions, and celery. There is a reason this soup tastes completely different than anything you buy in a grocery store today. Every single ingredient was pulled directly from the dirt in their own backyard. It was the direct physical product of that 20 million garden infrastructure. It was thick, filling, and soft enough for aging grandparents to eat without effort. Every spoonful contained something the family grew themselves. It was liquid patriotism. Today, restaurants serve farmstead potato soup for $14 a bowl. To a wartime mother, the ingredients were absolutely free. Number 8. Bean and bacon soup. Dried navy beans, water, onions, and one heavily guarded, precious bacon end or ham bone. Dried beans were unrationed and wildly cheap. A single ham bone stretched animal protein through an entire massive pot. The smell of this soup simmering all day was the smell of a secure, warm home during a bitter wartime winter. It was cooked entirely in one pot. That meant one single dish to wash for an exhausted mother, who had just worked a factory shift and managed a household alone while her husband was overseas. Number 7. Kidney stew. Beef kidneys, hearts, onions, and potatoes. Organ meats were pushed aggressively by the government because they required far fewer red ration points than muscle meat. Even the White House served it. The secret weapon here was the thick, dark gravy. Mothers used it to completely disguise the utility meat so children would eat it without asking questions. Beef kidneys cost 10 cents a pound in 1943. Today, farm-to-table restaurants charge $28 for trendy nose-to-tail organ dishes. Number 6. Salmon patties. Canned salmon, an egg, and crushed crackers. Canned fish required blue stamps, but it was far more accessible than fresh beef. Mixing it with breadcrumbs stretched a single can to feed an entire table. For families across the country, this was the Friday night staple. Frying these patties in a little bit of fat made it feel like a real, dignified dinner, when everything else felt like a brutal compromise. Number 5. Cabbage and potato gratin. Cabbage and potatoes were strictly unrationed. They were the unsung, heavy-lifting backbone of the home front. Mothers layered them together, poured over a very thin white sauce, added a microscopic scraping of cheese, and baked it. This was making do at its absolute finest, creating a dish that tasted rich and satisfying, using almost nothing that required a government stamp. Number 4. Mock chicken legs. Ground beef or pork, breadcrumbs, and wooden skewers. When poultry was scarce, mothers performed a masterful visual magic trick. They packed cheap ground meat tightly around wooden sticks, shaping them to perfectly resemble chicken drumsticks. They breaded and fried them. It was the ultimate illusion to keep children happy and ignorant of the rationing math. A family portion cost about 20 cents to make. Today, they call it city chicken, and nostalgic restaurants in Pittsburgh will charge you $16 for a single plate. We have reached the top 3. These are not the most glamorous meals on this list. They are the most important. They are physical monuments to American endurance. They are the meals that carried the heaviest emotional weight of the war, demanding the most sacrifice and providing the deepest comfort. Number 3. Spam and potato hash. Diced spam, potatoes, and onions, fried together in one cast-iron skillet. The Hormel Corporation shipped over 150 million pounds of spam to Allied troops during the war. Back on the home front, American wives relied on it heavily because canned meat demanded far fewer red ration points than fresh cuts. It was a dish that was constantly mocked, joked about at the dinner table, and simultaneously depended on for basic survival. It perfectly represented the absolute absurdity and the brutal practicality of the time. Families laughed about it to keep from crying about what was missing. In 1943, a can of Spam cost about 35 cents. Today, that same can costs over $3.50, and trendy Hawaiian fusion restaurants will serve you a single slice of Spam musubi for $8. Number 2. Creamed chipped beef on toast, better known by its military slang, SOS. Dried chipped beef, torn into pieces, simmering in a thick white sauce made of butter, flour, and milk, poured heavily over a piece of toast. It took exactly 10 minutes to make in a single pan. Because dried beef was shelf-stable, it was a staple in both military mess halls and cramped home-front kitchens. This was the one meal that bridged the massive, terrifying gap between the bloody front lines and the quiet, anxious home front. When veterans finally came home from Europe or the Pacific, this was one of the few meals they recognized, sitting at their mother's kitchen table, eating the exact same dish they ate in the barracks. It was a visceral, physical connection between the men fighting the war and the women holding the country together. Today, nostalgic diners serve this as a $14 comfort food classic. In 1943, a mother fed her entire family with it for roughly 15 cents. Number 1. Victory Meatloaf, the absolute pinnacle of wartime alchemy. According to the USDA Victory Recipes pamphlet of 1943, the government pleaded with women to use meat extenders. A mother would take a single half-pound of ground beef, an agonizingly small amount of protein, and mix it heavily with an equal portion of cheap oatmeal. She would season it, shape it in a tin, and stretch that half-pound of meat to feed a family of 6. The children eating it never knew the truth. They never knew the desperate kitchen mathematics their mother was doing in her head. It was a silent, protective lie. She manufactured the illusion of abundance so her children would not feel the crushing weight of poverty. She fed 6 people for pennies. Today, you can walk into a modern gastropub in any major American city, order an artisan meatloaf, and hand the waiter $22. Your grandmother called it making do. These 25 meals were never just about saving a nickel. They were never just about stretching a ration stamp. They were about dignity. They were a method of maintaining human dignity and a sense of normalcy when the entire world was trying to tear it apart. Look at the reality of America in 2026. We are living in a new kind of crisis. According to data published recently, 14.7 million Americans over the age of 65 are currently living entirely alone. 41% of Americans in their 60s report feeling chronically lonely. And on top of that isolation, the grocery math is becoming brutal again. With beef prices climbing another 9 to 10%, families on fixed incomes are staring at the exact same terrifying grocery math their grandmothers did. The food industry's solution for those isolated seniors is a high-sodium, ultra-processed frozen tray that they microwave in silence. But the real answer was engineered 80 years ago. These forgotten wartime meals, soft, thick potato soups, slow-simmered navy beans. Single-pan hashes are the exact antidote to modern inflation and modern isolation. They require minimal chopping. They use whole, real ingredients. They create exactly one dish to wash. So, here is the reality check, and here is your challenge. Do not just treat this as a nostalgic history lesson. Do not just watch this screen and swipe to the next distraction. Reclaim this infrastructure. Sometime this week, buy a bag of dry navy beans and an onion. Make a pot of bean soup. Turn off your smart home devices. Step away from the subscription model of modern survival. Sit down at a real wooden kitchen table, not your living room sofa. Eat it slowly. Taste the silence. Taste the resilience of the generation that built the ground you are standing on. And before you go down to the comments right now. If your family has a recipe that was passed down on a faded, handwritten index card, a depression cake, a mock apple pie, a stretch stew, type it out, document it, leave it there for someone else to find. Because if we do not preserve this knowledge right now, the food industry will gladly erase it forever. The survival of this knowledge belongs to us. Stand your ground. Cook your food. The recipes we have shared today are not just lists of ingredients. They are the physical blueprints of American resilience. Memorize them. Practice them. Because the only true security you have is what you can build and sustain with your own two hands. Do not let this knowledge die in the dark.